US Marines capture a Japanese trench and are amazed. There is no machine gun inside. Through doctrine, industry, and frontline reports, it reveals how the knee mortar and LP replaced PP in brutal close combat. The trench was hit by a short burst of grenades and 2 volleys of a flamethrower. The Marines, an assault 2, jump into the course of the message and prepare to see the usual set for close combat. Submachine guns, short barrels, packs of magazines. In the American branches, it was like this. Thompson or M3 grease gun, sometimes a BAR on the pickup. But in the captured Japanese trench, the picture is different. In the niches and loopholes are Arisaka long rifles, Type 38 under 6.5 millimeters or Type 99 under 7.7 millimeters. One light machine gun, Type 96 or Type 99, is mounted on bipods. In the corners there are wooden boxes with grenades tied with twine, and on the bottom there are short, smooth barrels with an arc-shaped sight, the notorious knee mortars, officially Type 89 grenade launchers. There are no vending machines at all. This is not a curiosity, but a systemic feature of the Imperial Army. The Japanese rifle cell was built around a light machine gun. It provided the bulk of the fire. Rifles covered long distances and flanks, and the Type 89 added fast, dense mounted damage at 50 to 120 meters. In this design, the submachine gun simply did not have a mandatory role. Where an American would have instinctively reached for a compact machine gun to clear the message, the Japanese laid a couple of mines from the Type 89, cut off the approach with a machine gun burst, and reported with rifle fire. Where does the expectation of automatic machines come from? From their own standards. In the Pacific War, the American infantry and Marines solved the melee problem by saturating short-barreled automatic weapons. Thompson is heavy but reliable. M3 is light and cheap. In the trench, in the bunker, in the jungle, it looked natural. It was logical to assume that the enemy was going the same way. But the Japanese school made a different bet. Her pocket killer is not a PP, but a knee grenade launcher. The mine weighs about the size of a grenade. The shot is noisier than a rifle shot. The trajectory is steep. The fragments are evil. In the experience of American paramedics, it was precisely such shrapnel damage from trench skirmishes that was frighteningly common. Therefore, a trench without machine guns is not a weakness, but another recipe for close range. The historical logic of this choice is clear. First, the doctrine. The pre-war Japanese infantry emphasized fire discipline and marksman training. A light machine gun, as the heart of the squad, provided a firing rod. Rifles kept range and accuracy. Grenades and Type 89 added instant pressure when breaking through or repelling an assault. Secondly, industry and resources. The country dragged on its fleet and aircraft, suffered a shortage of raw materials, and paid for it in the minutiae of infantry weapons. Submachine guns simply did not receive priority either in design bureaus or on factory lines. Thirdly, patronage policy. The transition from 6.5 millimeters to 7.7 millimeters was uneven, which complicated the supply and slowed down the parallel deployment of a new range for a separate pistol ammunition. And the Type 100? You may ask. Yes, the Japanese PP existed, and in 2 main guises, the early Type 100 and the simplified, wartime, Type 100/44. But it was a technique of small numbers. The total output was estimated at only a few thousand, with a maximum of tens of thousands in optimistic estimates, and a significant portion went to assault groups, Navy Marines, and garrisons where weapons were needed for cramped spaces. This stream almost did not spill onto the line of ordinary rifle units. That's why the Marines have captured experience. There are rifles. There is a light machine gun. There are grenades and knee grenades. But there are no submachine guns. If you decompose the trench without machine guns into inventory, you get a characteristic list. First, Arisaka, long, sturdy, with bayonets, which the Japanese treated not as a relic, but as a tool for close-range finishing. Secondly, the light machine gun was the point around which the approach overlap sector was built. The crew was able to move it between the embrasures, knocking down the pace of the advancing. Third, grenades are in bags, in boxes, and sometimes primitive landmines. Fourth, Type 89. Equipped tubular guns for mines which were so unsuccessfully called knee-high. Those who tried to rest them on their hips quickly learned not to repeat the mistake. In sum, this created a defense where threats did not come from a short automatic burst, but from above, overhanging, and across, a long machine gun line. The scene we started with is surprising because it meets expectations. The American is used to it. Close combat is the realm of PP. The Japanese built it around a mortar shell and a light machine gun. When a trench is captured, you can see it with your eyes. The barrels are long. The magazines are not boxed from PP, but discs and tapes for LP. Boxes with mines instead of bags with spare magazines. And if you found pouches in an American dugout 45 ACP, here you will find cases for mortar charges and spare gas regulators for Type 96. It is important to emphasize that the lack of automatic weapons does not equal weakness in cramped conditions. Melee is not only about the rate of fire, it's about pace, surprise, and saturation, with dangerous trivia. The Japanese trench worked like a mechanical clock of a strange kind. A short roll of mines, a machine gun cutoff, a grenade throw, a rollback into the next bend of the message. The submachine gun fit into such choreography worse than it seems from the American side. Where the PP fills the corner with a burst, the Type 89 throws shrapnel at it, and the machine gun holds the line of the second position. In order not to turn this into scholasticism, one mini timeline is enough. Late 1930s. Episodic experiments with PP. No doctrinal solution. 1942. Type 100 was adopted, but without a detailed saturation program. 1944. A simplified version of the Type 100/44 appears with cut technological corners, again without the great flood to the troops. 1945. Emphasis on the latest, cheap solutions in basic classes of weapons, rather than on mass production. If you look only at this series of dates, it becomes clear why the American assault groups found the same thing over and over again. Rifles, light machine guns, knee mortars, and no forest of short machine guns. Chapter 2. Why without PP? Doctrine, industry, priorities. The Japanese infantry came to war with a different melee recipe. It was based on a light machine gun as a firing rod, the training of shooters with long rifles and instant-mounted fire from a Type 89 grenade launcher. In this construction, the submachine gun was assigned not the main role, but an episodic one. And it wasn't ignorance or stubbornness, but the rationality of the chosen system, supported by how the Empire understood its war and what it really had. The doctrinal logic grew out of the interwar experience. During the exercises, the squad learned not to flood the space with short bursts, but to cut out sectors with LP fire, support them with accurate rifle fire, and finish them off with Type 89 grenades and mines. The commanders demanded savings in ammunition and discipline, because the supply route was long, and the battle on the islands often turned into a competition of patience. The PP in this equation did not have a unique effect. Its niche was blocked by a machine gun at the stop, and a fragment falling on the head due to the bend of the trench. Industry stuck to the doctrine. The Empire was simultaneously growing its navy and aviation, patching up fuel shortages, and depending on vulnerable sea lanes. Any new nomenclature entailed tooling, stamps, trained workers, and machines. Mass production of PP required a stable production of pistol cartridges, the production of magazines and parts with precise geometry. The management, counting the resources, relied on what had already paid off. Rifle and machine gun systems, mines for Type 89, grenades. Expanding the zoo for weapons that didn't change the basic geometry of combat seemed like overkill. The ammunition itself was a separate pain. The Army went to war with two rifle calibers, 6.5 and 7.7 millimeters, moving from one to the other in steps rather than an instant click. Additionally, introducing a large pistol flow would mean multiplying the nomenclature noise and risks in the depots of the divisions. On island routes, where every cubic meter of fuel counted, logistics chose predictability. It was better to bring more tapes and rifle packs to the line, more shots for the Type 89, than to spray on a new class that was not critically indispensable. The experience of combat has confirmed this economy. In the jungles, atolls, and concrete junctions, it was not stairwells and corridors of high-rise buildings that dominated, but broken trenches, pockets, and communication passages. The Japanese pre-mapped the intersecting sectors with machine guns and covered the blind spots with mines. The Type 89 made it possible to shoot from under cover, throw gaps at the turn of the trench, and psychologically break the assault. In such a geometry, a short burst of PP solved less than an accurate platoon of LP and a spent canopy of fragments. We must not forget about time. The Type 100 was adopted, brought into service, and simplified in 1944, but neither supplies nor training managed to turn it into the language of the department. The parties were small, and priority was given to assault groups, naval garrisons, and special units. He was hardly seen in the mass infantry, which meant that tactics continued to revolve around the old corps. When the period of last measures came, the factories began not to expand the range, but to reduce the cost of basic samples in order to somehow keep the front. Organizational inertia amplified the effect. A typical squad was built around the commander and crew of a light machine gun. The rest were instructed to provide ammunition, hold long-range targets with rifles, and work with grenades. If you give a machine gun to every second person, the center of gravity will shift from a machine gun to individual fire, and the entire command and training system will require a redesign. For the Army, which had been cultivating the stability of the corps for decades, such a turn looked like an unwise risk in the midst of a major war. There was also a symbolic side to this story. The Japanese infantry cultivated a long barrel, bayonet, and fortitude. In such optics, PP seemed not to be a sign of military prowess, but a craft tool of the police, borders, or urban assault. It wasn't banned, but it wasn't made an emblem either. And symbols are critically important. What is respected is ordered. What is believed is given priority in the budget. The strategic horizon completed the mosaic. The Empire expected to win campaigns with the speed and initiative of the fleet, and not by reworking the infantry material for a long, exhausting conflict. When the war became a marathon, it was too late to rebuild the idea of separation and the machine park. Attempts to catch up with the enemy during the year rested on a shortage of raw materials, the destruction of logistics, and the loss of qualified personnel. The comparison with the USA only highlights the difference between schools. The Americans invested in short-barreled automatic fire in advance, BAR as a bridge between a rifle and a machine gun, flamethrowers and a powerful assault culture. Their alphabet required PP as the first letter. The Japanese solved the same problem with a different set, a machine gun sector plus Type 89 mines. Therefore, the Marines repeatedly saw trenches without machine guns. The enemy's system simply did not consider PP indispensable. If we put all the arguments in one chain, we get a clear conclusion. The doctrine of the firing rod and the economy of ammunition, industrial limitations and caliber confusion, the geometry of island defense and the inertia of training, symbols of military culture and the belated Type 100. All these factors have developed in such a way that the mass PP did not appear in the Japanese infantry. This is not a whim or a mistake, but a sequence of choices in conditions of scarcity and other tactical mathematics. And if so, the trench without machine guns ceases to be a mystery and becomes the natural outcome of a different school of melee combat. The final touch is risk behavior. PP is strong in close quarters but voracious in ammunition. The Type 89, on the contrary, saves shots and allows you to hit marked targets from cover. For the army men, who knew the value of every box on the barge, such arithmetic looked more convincing. Therefore, even where PP fell into the hands, it remained an instrument of chance, and not the norm of the system, to spare time. For the Marines, surprise was born not in the trophy museum, but at the moment of entering someone else's trench. They were preparing for the usual short duel of several steps, where a burst of PP and a grenade throw decide. The reality was different. Fragments of a knee-high mortar were falling from above. A light machine gun was hitting from the flank, and long rifles were lying in niches. There were no empty nests for the boxes of stores at all. The feeling wasn't, where are their guns, but why are we being cut diagonally even though we're already inside? The geometry of the battle explained the answer. The Japanese built a broken trench with frequent bends and crevices, which were covered by a machine gun from the next shoulder. Where the American hoped to skip the corner on a dash under a short queue, he was met by a hinged gap around the bend. The Type 89 mortars worked without leaning out. 2 or 3 shots, a pause, a change of position, 2 or 3 more. At times it seemed that the trench itself was firing. The sound was short, popping, and the gaps appeared as if from the void. The same pattern grows out of the reports of the assault groups. The first bundle is smoke and a flamethrower, then grenades, then assault pairs according to the message moves. The bar and carbines suppress the embrasures. The Thompson or M3 hold the entrances to the pockets, but the flamethrower and the demolition bag often have the final say. The reason is simple. A machine gun protected by soil is rarely knocked out in one burst. It is reset by heat or explosion, and not by short automatic fire. The submachine gun remained an instrument of passage, not a final denouement. Medical statistics added their dry arithmetic to these lines. Shrapnel wounds and concussions from mortar explosions were more common than pistol bullet holes. The description is typical. Lacerations of open areas, dirty splinters in the thighs and forearms, burns from flamethrowers in those who did not have time to move away from the message. PP is almost invisible in the damage pattern, but damage from knee and LP is systemic, repetitive, predictable in the phases of the assault. The fire and movement tactics were adapting. The jerks became shorter, the insurance denser, the smoke more generous. Squad commanders were taught to hug the parapet and enter closer to the enemy in order to reverse the trajectory of the Type 89. The mortar has a dead zone at an extremely short distance. Flamethrowers came out as a means of knocking out a machine gun point. Sappers carried bags of tolome and directional charges. The briefings before the attack increasingly included: look for a light machine gun and mortar, not machine guns. Suppress the angle, not just the front embrasure. Psychologically, the first time always got on my nerves. There are no machine guns there. Sounds like relief from the outside. But inside the trench, it feels like a new nuisance. The sky is sick, as they said in company jokes. Danger falls from above and gushes from the next shoulder where you cannot reach. After the second or third battle, the pattern becomes recognizable. Prepare smoke at the entrance. Listen to the pops. Count the intervals. Wait for the side cutoff of the machine gun. Surprise is replaced by routine, and routine is replaced by methodology. The Marines remembered the rare encounters with the Type 100 as a curiosity, not as the norm. PP fell into the hands of garrison positions, in cluttered dugouts, signalmen, or stormtroopers. Sometimes it was an early version, sometimes a simplified 44th. The treatment is simple. Inspection, photo. Sometimes a short run, in at the shooting range. The bulletins on combat experience emphasized, it is rare. Do not change the usual order of cleaning for it. That's how the collective experience took shape. They noted it, were surprised, put it on the shelf and returned to the flamethrower and charges. In the reports on fire interaction, another motive is noticeable: the consumption of ammunition. The American assault group was carrying a heavy load of ammunition and had to replenish more often, especially if the site turned into a protracted cleaning of the communication routes. The Japanese side, on the contrary, saved cues and built up the battle with a series of mortar volleys and short lines of machine gun fire. The energy of the fight was distributed in steps. A splash at the entrance, a dip under the smoke, a splash at the next bend. The PP did not impose a tempo. The tempo was set by flamethrowers and sapper charges. In tactical diagrams, this looks like a triangle of pain. A light machine gun is the top, a mortar is the canopy, and grenades are the foot. The American school responded with its own triangle. A flamethrower, the top, a crushing charge, a blow to the pocket, and a bullet, clearing the passage. The two geometries rarely combined. The victory was decided by whose design managed to take shape faster, and did not break down from the first mistake. When the flamethrower reached the embrasure, the defense fell quickly. When the machine gun survived 2 or 3 passes, the attackers paid with blood and time. The myth of weakness without automata was born rather in the rear imagination. Newsreel footage and newspaper captions loved the simple formula. We have machine guns, they have old rifles. This formula did not work on the front line. The veterans said otherwise. They are different, not worse. The development of the myth also had a side effect: underestimating the knee and machine gun crosses at the reader's home. After the campaigns, staff manuals and training films emphasized, don't look for PP wood from the Japanese, look for their real teeth, Type 89 and LP. There is also a downside. Respect for the enemy system grew along with the skill of breaking it. The Marines noted the discipline of fire, the tenacity of calculations, and bold counterattacks by small groups from neighboring pockets. Individual episodes. The nighttime release of grenades, serial pops at the moment of changing posts. The rearrangement of the machine gun by moves were verbally analyzed as the correct moves of the enemy. Respect did not negate the assessment of the outcome, but it removed condescension. As a result, the trench without machine guns entered the memory not as an anecdote, but as a badge of distinction of schools. The American infantry honed their assault with fire and explosion in close quarters, The Japanese defense responded with a canopy and crosshairs. Submachine guns were a symbol of 1 grammar of close combat. A knee mortar and a light machine gun were another. When a fighter jumped into someone else's message and did not find what was expected, he was not happy. He rebuilt his head. Now we will have to work according to their rules, but we will break our own. This is how practical morality develops. The absence of machine guns from the enemy did not simplify the task of the assault. It simply changed the list of mandatory actions. If smoke, flamethrowers, and sapper charges are not mentioned in the briefing, if no pairs are assigned to cut off the side sector, the trench without machine guns will be heavier than the trench with them. This experience became part of post-war training manuals and memories. Before explaining the war with iron, it is worth remembering that combat is about geometry and habits. But the habits of those who sat opposite were arranged differently, and that's why they were so memorable.